Very nice.
How was Jerry to work with back then?
He was fine. I didn't know his story
What
about
was he
it.
like, 25?
Yeah, he was right after he came to the company.
So were
You know,
you guys the same similar age or he was older than you?
he's younger than me, I think.
Oh, okay.
I
Okay.
think he's younger than me. Uh, because I had one run-in with him, and that was at Covent Garden, first tour of the company in 1950. And he had choreographed earlier that year Age of Anxiety. And I had sort of a focal part in the first section called The Seven Stages, where four boys threw me up in the air and then I ran off stage. Well, he decided he didn't like my exit and Frank Muncion's entrance, so he wanted to change it. And so we got on the stage with the group in that section, and I got thrown up in the air and thrown off the stage. Then I got thrown off and rolled off. Then I got thrown off, and Frank caught me and swung around and threw me off stage. I mean, he tried every possible exit he could think. And finally got frustrated, and he stood in the middle of the stage and laid me to filth. Because it was never Jerry's fault. It
Right.
was all somebody else's fault.
Right.
And so he let me have it, just saying that I wasn't responding, I wasn't listening to him, I wasn't doing what he wanted, and I was beaten up. That stage at Covent Garden was an opera stage as well as a ballet stage. It
Uh,
was slivers, it was hardwood, there were cracks.
oh,
So, and I weighed about 126 pounds, sort of soaking wet. So hip bones were bruised. I had scratches on my legs, with slivers going in through my tights. And I was worn out from all the activity.
yeah.
So I stood there and I said, Mr. Robbins, I don't think this is my fault. I think this is your fault.
Oh, wow. And?
I said, and I've worked as hard as I can possibly work, and I have the bruises and the scratches and the wounds to show it. And I'm out of here. And I walked off the stage
Good for you.
and I went down to the dressing room and I thought on the way down, I said, well, you've just done it, Bobby. You're going to be on a slow boat back to New York and with no money and no job and back to store one. So you better start. So I got undressed, put on my robe, and in Covent Garden there were showers, but they were in the sub basement. It was like a big bowl, and there were showers all the way around the room.
Okay.
And so I went down there and I got in the shower and I thought, still fretting and worrying about what the next step was going to be. And I must have been there 20 minutes, a half hour, and finally I decided, well, I got to get out of here. So I put on my robe, went back to the dressing room. I walked in, and Jerry was sitting
Oh.
there in the dressing room. Nobody else there, just Jerry and me. And he apologized. He said, Bobby, I'm sorry. It was a frustration of the moment. We're going to leave the ballet like it is, and I'd like to take you to dinner.
Wow.
And I said, well, I didn't want to get involved in that, though.
Yeah.
So I said, no, I'm sorry, Jerry. I thank you for the apology, and I really did try as hard as I could possibly try. He says, I realize that now. So anyhow, it was a very pleasant back and forth.
Yeah, that's
And
great.
I visited friends for dinner, and he went on his way. And for the rest of the time I was in the company, I never had a problem with him.
That's
Never.
interesting.
All around me, people he was mean to, including my Ginger. The first day she joined the company, she walked down the steps. The studio was on Broadway then, and there were steps into the studio. She was walking down the steps to a rehearsal of Age of Anxiety. She was in the, and he said to her, "Little girl, we don't allow people in the studio unless you're in the company." They said, Mr. Robbins, my name is on the board for this rehearsal. That's why I'm here. And so he just tried everything, especially if you were Jewish.
Oh, interesting.
He seemed, Barbara Milberg Fisher, who was another originator of the company dancers, he was on her case all the time, he would put her in a ballet and take her out, put her in, take her out. But she wound up on a tour that he did of Europe with his own, I forget the name of the company, but he had a company that toured, I think they even went into Eastern Europe.
Mm-hmm.
And, at one time.
Wow.
He was difficult, but I loved working with him. I really did. I enjoyed working with him so much because he was so detailed. You knew what your little fingernail was going to do. And I love that.
But at the same way, he sounds like he wanted a lot of just like organic, natural, like don't push and force something. Like as we're taught Robbins repertoire now, it's
right.
It's like keep it almost with a casual air or like a pedestrian type of feel. Like don't pull up too much. Like be a human being.
Right. I used to work with him a lot. If I didn't have a rehearsal and I was hanging out in the lobby and he didn't have a rehearsal, he would grab me and I worked on the concert, cage, all kinds of things, working out choreography with him. I didn't do the roles, but it was, he seemed to like to experiment in that way. Interesting thing in concert on opening night, I had learned Todd's role, Todd Bollinger, who was the lead in it, and I had learned his role.
Was he the husband?
Pardon?
The husband? Is that what that role is? Yeah.
Yes. And and he dealt with Yvonne Mounsey and Tanika Leclerc. And on opening night, Todd called in at half hour sick. Couldn't do the performance. So Jerry came running to my dressing room, and thank God I had gotten there early. I was made up, and I was ready for the ballet. And he says, "Bobby, how much do you remember of the husband's role?" And I said, "Well, I remember what you did for me, but you've changed it 16 times since then." And it's all new, what you did for Todd. He said, "Well, Todd can't dance tonight, so you're going to have to do it."
So are you listed as one of the original dancers?
Yeah.
Amazing.
And, but anyhow, I got in the hallway downstairs at the Center with Tanny and Yvonne Mounsey, and we sort of incorporated
your versions.
Yeah, our version. And thank God that I had, I learned fast, and I could retain things. So I went on opening night, we sort of winged it, but